All right, Mason, we're here, man. Thank you for joining us.
Yes, sir. How you doing?
Good, good, man. Probably not as good as you. You had a great year, huh?
Yeah, we had a good year. Now begins a transition, right? So the work hasn't exactly stopped. It's been kind of like uh, drinking out of a fire hose with maybe like a paper straw.
Okay,
So you
that's
know,
good. So, well, look. 2024 was a good election year if you're a Republican and you're on the Republican side, or if you had a dog in the hunt, chances are you probably did pretty well, especially on the Trump side. 2024 did what it did, huge swings. Uh, I guess it defied expectations in a lot of people's minds, which you followed us a lot on Twitter. We were pretty much locked in with our probabilities and our polling. We had Trump winning pretty much the whole time, even when, against Biden and Harris as well. Um, and yeah, I mean, it looks good. All right. The transition is moving. I just released a poll last week um, on the issues, right? Trump's favorability is at 53%. Optimism for the next 4 years was like at 56%. And how satisfied are you with the election outcome? 55%. What was Joe Biden's approval rating? Like 37%. So, look, man, it looks like the people were behind this election. I think everybody's happy with their choice at this point. And then you had this really strong comparison between Trump, the energy he brings, and then you have the Biden Harris campaign, which it doesn't look like anybody's even in the White House right now. So there's a lot of wondering, like, where the hell is Biden at, right?
right, right. Trump's kind of become the de facto head of state. He's traveling to France. He's going to
Yeah.
Notre Dame. He's sitting with the first lady, actually, not Melania, Jill Biden. She looked very excited to see the president-elect sitting next to her. Very excited. I'm sure she voted for him on election day.
Yeah, and then you had Trudeau coming down to meet with Trump at Mar-a-Lago. So it's
Yeah.
look, things are in play here, and you got these world leaders calling him about the war, and who knows. But so we got all this. This is the big picture. And then we have these races, right? These upsets that popped up around the nation in some certain places, and certainly there was a huge upset down in Louisiana, the Bayou State, my native state, and then currently where you reside. It was of course, we're talking about the East Baton Rouge mayor president race, or it's a mayor race. And there was a lot of, well, if you go back 20 years, there's a lot of challenges for a Republican to pick that seat up or pick that office up. And your boy, Sid Edwards, flipped that seat on a magnitude of 21-point swing from 2020.
21-point swing. I guess it was about a 19-point swing from November to December. So Kamala Harris won the parish 56-43.
Wow.
Yeah.
Kamala Harris won that parish in Louisiana?
Yeah, 56-43 over Trump.
Wow, and Trump carried Louisiana with 60 points, right?
60 points. So this is a blue island in a very red state. Yeah.
Wow. So perfect segue. All right, Mason, you're going to tell me and whoever is going to be watching this who you are and what. Obviously, we can see your tagline there. But how are you connected with Sid Edwards? And give us a little bit of the story here.
Yeah. So obviously, I'm Mason Batts. I'm the founder and CEO of MRB Political Consulting. MRB is just my initials, Mason Ryan Batts. So I started running political campaigns a few years back. Was lucky enough to kind of neither. Obviously, I'm younger. Neither of my parents were very political at all, but I was lucky enough to know some people through church and that kind of thing who were eventually going to run for political office. So that kind of merged that way. I ran a few. In Louisiana, we have an off-year election. So in 2023, I did a couple of state representative and state senate campaigns, all of which were successful. And we all won by a margin of 10 points or more in all of those races. So that was last year. So coming into 24, all right, so you have the presidential election going on. I knew this mayor president's race was happening. So it was very enticing. I've worked on the Shreveport mayor's race in the midterms in 2022, and we had a very good outcome there too, of more than a 20-point swing, and a Republican elected for the first time since 1992 or 1993.
In Shreveport?
In Shreveport, yeah.
Oh,
Were
I
they
wasn't
there?
aware of the Republican mayor in Shreveport. I was not aware of
Yeah.
that. I used to live in Bossier for.
Yeah. So his name's Tom Arsenault. And I
Oh,
think
yep.
Shreveport's probably at least 55% African American, probably closer to 60%.
Yeah.
If I so lucky enough to be involved in that race again, a race no one thought we could win, and we won it, and it was a big win. But Shreveport's not a very big place. I mean, it's a mid-sized city, 200,000 residents, so not a lot of people under that didn't get much press, right? No one really paid much attention. It was the midterms. Of course, the big story of that election cycle was how good Joe Biden did and how good the Democrats did on the back of abortion. And meanwhile, we were doing the hard work here in Louisiana to to flip a very solid Democratic city, and that's a solid Democratic city into the Republican column. So I think that we were very successful in doing that. Now moving on, so this year I was looking at the mayor president's race, and the demographics are similar actually. Baton Rouge is actually a little bit more applicable for maybe a Republican to become mayor, just demographics wise. So the good thing about Baton Rouge is that we didn't have a Shreveport. So in Shreveport is a city in Caddo Parish. For those of you not in Louisiana, parish is a county. So when I say parish, think county. So the parish is, a lot more white and a lot more Republican, but still tends to vote for Democrats in presidential elections. Historically, has had a Republican sheriff until last year. Actually, a Democrat won the sheriff's race there. But in East Baton Rouge, that's the mayor president. You're the mayor of Baton Rouge, but the parish president of East Baton Rouge Parish. So we had the benefit of being able to run the whole parish. So I started meeting with candidates and prospective candidates in January and February, and thought we had landed on a good candidate, someone who could win. And we gave them a whole list. I wrote out the war game and all this kind of stuff. Oddly enough, I found that war game soon after, or just before the December 5th or December 7th, whichever day it was, December 7th, runoff election. And of course, actually, if I read you that plan, it reads exactly the way the race happened. But that candidate ended up falling through and didn't end up working out. So I was kind of wandering in the wilderness, just decided I wasn't going to do any campaigns this year, go pursue some other hobbies I was kind of interested in. And then a congressional campaign kind of knocked at my door. I took it. It didn't end up working out between me and the candidate, so I jumped ship again, wandering in the wilderness. And then on Labor Day, actually, this coach who qualified for mayor president on the last day of qualifying, who I nor many other people had ever heard of, never held political office, called me. And I'd met him once before this, previous like 3 weeks that he was getting into the race. And really his campaign was a family-run operation up until this point. They had bought some signs. Actually, they bought one-sided signs. So that was like, and they would get a little bit of money and they didn't have any money. And they would get a little bit of money and go buy some signs. Well, they forgot they had to pay for the posts. Then we had to wait for more money. Then they would go get more posts. So at some point it did grow and he caught on. And so they said, we need some real help. So through some connections and stuff I met him and once, and he called me. I met with him on Labor Day, and I was hired on Labor Day, and we were off to the races. So that's how I came into being involved in this campaign.
So that's good. So that's the overview. I know you and I. Oh boy, when did you and I connect? September, August?
Probably August or September, maybe early September.
We were going to do some polling for you.
That's right.
We
never really had the money for it.
No, that's fine. And I assumed that I was going to do it at cost for you. I don't know if
that was the story on election night in November. So in Louisiana we have runoff. So everyone's in the jungle primary system, similar to the way they do it in California.
Yeah.
Everyone, Democrat, Republican, Independent, no party, they all get into the same ring, and then the top two go into a runoff.
That's right.
The story on. No one thought we were going to make it to the runoff. We had two Democrats in what everyone was calling a Democratic parish. Two Democrats, the incumbent mayor, Sharon Weston-Broome, and a challenger, her former campaign manager. And he was a 10-year state representative, and he worked for the Biden administration. And at that point, they thought those two would be in the race. They thought the news media believed that Ted James, who was a former, former representative and member of the Biden administration. He had raised about $1.1 million, and they thought he'd be sitting somewhere around 40% if you talk to the people who know, right? And they thought the mayor would be close second, and we would be somewhere in the about 20% range. We knew that wasn't the case. I mean, we could feel the way the winds were blowing, but the talk on election night was we only raised $80,000.
I saw that.
And the guy that was left out had 1.2 million. So that was the talk was 80,000. I guarantee you we spent every bit of that 80,000. And
that's amazing.
Yeah.
And she raised 600 plus, maybe.
Yeah, I think actually that was the first primary. She was about 650. I don't want to be wrong, but it was easily over 800. I think they were projecting her to get to $1 million. I don't know if that's there or not. I think she's still trying to raise some money now to pay off some debt. So I think she probably spent about $1 million if I had to guess.
That's ridiculous. I didn't know that. I didn't know they was going to raise that type of money. I assumed somebody would raise that type of money. I didn't know two candidates would raise that type of money out of such a small pool. Well, look, let me ask you about her, period. I don't know anything about the lady. I know she's 2 terms.
Yeah, 2 terms.
And I think she had a tighter election in 2016.
Yeah, she was a 34-year politician in the state of Louisiana. She's originally from Chicago, moved down to Louisiana to take care of her parents who lived in Baton Rouge. And then she stayed. She fell in love with the city and she stayed. And I want to make one thing clear. I think Mayor Broome's a wonderful, nice woman.
Really? Okay, very good.
Yeah, she's done a lot in her career, but sometimes it's just, it's time for change.
It's time for change. Yeah.
Time for change.
That was going to be my next question.
Yeah.
And
so
that's funny.
She started her career in the 80s, early 80s as a city council person. Her name was Sharon Weston. So she spent 2 terms in the city council, got married to her husband, Mr. Broome, so it's Sharon Weston-Broome now. Then she was 3 terms in the state house, and she was elected mayor. She was mayor president pro tem when she was on the council, so kind of second in command, the highest ranking member of the council. Then she became in the state house. In her last term, she was the speaker pro tem, so number 2 in the house. And then she ran for the Senate, got elected to the Senate, spent 3 terms in the Senate.
Wow.
Eventually became the Senate president pro tem and was the number 2 in the Senate here in Louisiana. So at that point, she decides she's termed out in 2015 from the Senate, and then in 2016 she decides to run for mayor president. She runs and she's successful, but like you said, it was very close. She won by about a little bit more, about 4,500 votes to another senator named Bodie White. And she runs again in 2020. She blows out the opponent. She almost wins it in the first primary, misses it by about 1.5 points. So that's kind of her overview. She'd never lost an election before last Saturday.
That's amazing, man. That's very good. I didn't know, and you've already answered that question. I didn't know if there was some corruption involved. Why was it time for her to go? It seems more like it was just the headwinds were against her. It was time for change. I'm sure Baton Rouge.
There's some things that happen. Our crime rates. We have a bad crime. East Baton Rouge has got its own problems, right? Always the economy, because it's industry, right? It's heavy industry down in Baton Rouge. That's right.
You got union support down there, yeah.
Yeah, it's faded. It's faded in recent years, but there's still some old union.
Yeah, it's not like it was in the 80s and 90s.
No, but there's still some here. In the African American community, obviously the unions remain strong, and there's still some in the northern part of the parish. So yeah.
So for our listeners, Louisiana is heavy on the economy is heavily on industry in terms of obviously our petroleum, oil and gas, and it fluctuates. It's feast or famine. It's almost like it's like a colony. It behaves like a colony of the Spanish and French. You see these colony islands and colony countries. Louisiana has that flavor, right? You got New Orleans. It looks like a damn European city down in the deep South, right? And you have these holdovers Louisiana's an interesting state, man. I did a lot of study on it, and
Yeah.
I got some books on Louisiana. I got
It's
the
certainly, people won't understand. It's certainly the most diverse state in.
It is, and the politics is just wild down there. It is.
Yeah.
We prefer if you can be a crook, you can be a crook as long as you're colorful.
As long as you're colorful, that's right. We'll take
You can tell some good jokes, and we've had some colorful characters down there. Of course, we have Huey P. Long, who still to this day dominates the state.
Yeah,
even in death. I mean, because
until 2020, there was a long elected to either the state legislature or statewide office.
There you go.
From 1928 until 2020.
His legacy
gap in the 50s.
Yeah, I mean his legacy. Yeah, his legacy, Louisiana style politics. We've had several constitutions.
Yep.
Just his style, his spirit. Our Capitol building is because of Huey P. Long.
Yeah,
it
was a monument basically built.
It was, man. It's just a lot of cool stuff. Now you grew up around Baton Rouge, is that correct?
No, I grew up in Shreveport.
Okay, all right.
From Shreveport, and I moved to Baton Rouge.
Okay, I got you. Yeah.
Demographically, they're actually pretty similar. There's a lot of Baton Rouge has 300,000 more people than Shreveport, but there's a lot of different things. But demographically, very similar. It's a divided city. In Shreveport, it's kind of the east and west. In Baton Rouge, the north and south. So a lot of things are the same. And I kind of fell in love with Baton Rouge. I felt like it was a little bit safe. I felt like it was safer than Shreveport because it was a bit bigger, I think, and crime was more segmented versus in Shreveport, it's kind of more, rampant across the city. So I think that's why I really fell in love with the city. It has a lot of the things I love about Shreveport, and it doesn't have a lot of things I don't like about it.
So I lived in Bossier City from 2015 to 2019, January 2019. Yeah. I lived there for that long. I worked at the Cyber Innovation Center. I helped a cyber startup kind of stabilize and grow. My CEO is from Alexandria. Well, actually, he grew up in Vernon Parish. He lives in Alexandria, and I grew up in Vernon Parish. I don't know if you know where Vernon Parish is.
Oh, yeah, I know where Vernon Parish is.
So, which is a whole lot of nothing. You got Fort Polk and Leesville and some small towns. I grew up in a very rural small town, and so did he.
I've gotten some tickets in Leesville before, so.
Oh, yeah. That's how they make money, brother.
Yeah.
But I lived in Bossier. I don't know if you know where the big golf course is, Stonebridge.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I lived in Stonebridge for years.
Yeah.
I loved it, man. I loved living in Bossier and Shreveport. I absolutely loved it.
Yeah.
Like you said, Shreveport's got some issues, but I loved it, man. The food is good. I don't live in Louisiana. I actually live in East Texas, which is just a couple of hours from Shreveport. Right. I live here because my children are here. But if I ever had to go back, I probably would. I'd probably live in Natchitoches, something around there. Maybe I might go back to Bossier City, but or I could stay here because land is good. Cost of living is good, and you can live like a king on a decent salary here in East Texas. So dude, there's no comparison in terms of state economies and infrastructure from Louisiana to Texas. I'm sure you've driven from Louisiana into Texas, and the roads get way better.
You can feel when you cross the
it's like going to a third world country. Yeah, but Louisiana's home, and I hope to one day get back there. I feel like a traitor. But I've lived all over, man. I lived in D.C. I lived in D.C. for 5 years, or outside of D.C., Northern Virginia. I lived in Georgia, and I've lived, but that was years ago. It's because of my career and whatnot. Yeah, man, I like it a lot. So, and I'm the mayor of my town, the little town I grew up in. He was real connected to Bobby Jindal, and he's been the mayor there for a while. So there's always that home connection to everything. Right. Did you go to school at Captain Shreve or Airline? Where'd you go to school?
I went to Calvary Baptist Academy, which is a small-ish Baptist school, but we were very prominent in sports, and so won state championships in high school. So smaller school, but there's been a lot of talent that's come out of there.
There's always baseball, football, big time.
Football, yeah. So no, it was good. I was student body president there and all that kind of stuff. So
good for you, man.
It was a good place. It was a good place to go to school. I was happy.
So did you go to now you got into this stuff? Did you get a poli-sci degree? Did you go to LSU? How did you?
I did go to LSU, and I'm actually still at LSU online to finish that degree. Technically, yes, it's poli-sci, but I'm not in an arrogant tone, but I could probably teach the class. So, it's one thing to be smart, in a classroom, right, as a professor. It's totally different, and this, to practice in the outside world. So, but I'm going to finish that degree.
That's awesome. Good for you, man. That's a good story. This is a good story. You're building a heck of a resume down there, man. And
thank you.
Well, we got midterms coming up, and you and I are going to be connected after this podcast, and for the next couple of years, we're going to be a little connected and start working together. We got some things lined up, and I want to pull you in to some of those things. I'll tell you more about it offline. We got some growing we're doing over here in terms of how we're getting ready to roll out in 2026. And you gave us a couple of shout outs on Twitter.
Yeah.
We had a great year, man.
Y'all had a really, really good year. I think I found you when it was you and your partner running it.
Yeah.
Probably it was over a year ago. And that was back when you were Quantus Polls and News, right?
Yeah, Quantus Polls and News.
Polls and News. You had Huey Long as your backdrop, and I kept seeing you on my feed. I said, "Well, I'm just going to follow these guys. They seem to kind of know what they're talking about. Look at these polls." So, and then of course you started polling June or July?
July was our first poll, and we scraped together. That's before we got acquired, and we crowdfunded that, and we scraped together a couple of $1,000s to run that poll.
Yeah, and you were open sourcing your data. So I mean, I was,
yeah, dude.
I was going through, and I was like, this looks legit. This is not your average, And then of course we spoke, and then I had complete confidence.
Yep.
And look, at the end of the year, and I think y'all took a lot of hits. They called y'all just one of these random polling shots that pops up, just throws numbers out there, blah blah blah. But at the end of the day, y'all were the most accurate nationally.
Yep. And it was across the Rust Belt. It was national polling. We were accurate in Nevada in September. We had Trump winning Nevada in September. Nobody else had him winning Nevada in September. We had him winning North Carolina by 2 points in September when the race was supposedly tied in September. And I was like, this is not a tied race. And that's where all this stuff happened, because I made a stupid tweet and I said, "You're welcome." Yeah. And they took it as I was trying to move the average. No, I was trying to tell you, you're welcome. You got a good guy polling North Carolina, and it's not a tied race in North Carolina. Trump's up 2, and he's probably going to win it by 3. That was my tweet. And then the model. So basically, we really this was a hobby, man. I had a full-time career. I was in cyber security and consulting and doing other things, but having to do cyber. I'm not a computer whiz, even though I work in cyber. I understand what cyber is. But it was working with data, and it was saying, you know what, man, I can use this. I can use Python. I can do something. I can create some predictive modeling, and I know how to work with data. I know how to create models, and it just kind of fed into itself. And then I started messing around and going, I'm nailing all these past elections. My models, because I'm using the same variables, but pertinent to that election year.
Right.
And I'm knocking these elections out of this. I mean, just nailing these elections. So, long story short, I had Kamala Harris. My models projected Kamala Harris to finish at 48.4% of the national popular vote. And she's probably going to finish at 48.4% of the national popular vote.
If they ever get done counting out there in California.
No, dude, that is such nuts. So, again, this isn't about – I don't want to make this a Quantus Insights victory lap. I've done a few of those already. Yeah. I'm just saying we had a good year, and I look forward to more, man. We have to prove ourselves. It's one thing to get it right.
Get it right once. You'll get it right 3 and 4 times. And
there you go. That's the longevity of it. That's how Rich Barris Trafalgar had a roughish year in 2022.
Yeah, no, they Trafalgar and Insider Advantage both took a took a big hit in 2022. But and those guys will tell you that.
Well, so did we. Our models predicted a complete wash in 2022, but we didn't. We don't run the same models, and we need.
It's we had some polls that were not done we had some polls that were done publicly and privately. I kept telling in our race down here, I kept telling my staff it's hard to predict turnout. You use your turnout models, and you'll know more about this than I do, but you got to build a turnout model.
Probably not. Go ahead.
Yeah, or not. You can let the model. You can let the respondents tell you the model. That works really good, doesn't it? You can come up with the idea that Kamala Harris will win Iowa by 3 points if you do that. So it just depends who shows up to vote, right? And I think that a lot of people didn't understand. And in 2022, there's a big difference in who should have shown up to vote versus who actually showed up on election day.
That's exactly right. That's exactly right.
And people who thought that would have some sort of major effect on the 2024 election, they just didn't understand it. Well, those people were already going to show up anyway, but now you'll have a different group of people showing up. But to non-political people, they just don't understand that. It's this or that. There's really no gray area, which I understand. That's what that stands for, right?
So Mason, you're exactly right. So this is your job. So 2020, this is your job. Very good. So you're rolling right into this in 2026.
That's right. Yeah. I don't think there's much going on in 25. I think that, but in Louisiana, we've got a contentious Senate race coming up here. So I'm sure I'll get a call on that at some point. We have the incumbent Senator Bill Cassidy. He's a two-termer. He was elected in 2020 off the winds of being Donald Trump's best friend and this, that, and the other. Of course, later he goes on and, for better or worse, he voted to convict Trump after he was out of office in 2020. So I think that will be a tight Senate race. You've got our state treasurer has already announced that he's running, John Fleming, former congressman. So I think
John Fleming. Yep.
Yeah. John Fleming, I imagine, congressman from Northwest Louisiana for years and years, and ran for Senate unsuccessfully against John Kennedy, who was the state treasurer, oddly enough, that year. So I think it'll be a tight race. We'll see what happens. It'll be fun.
So our speaker, Mike Johnson, was he a sheriff?
Mike was never a sheriff. So Mike went to LSU, graduated in 95, 96-ish, and he was a lawyer. He constitutional law.
Okay, I'm sorry. I really blew that one up.
He was a Sunday school teacher at my church, and so that's how. Actually, this is a good story. So Mike was never a politician, but argued in front of the state Supreme Court, and all that kind of stuff for kind of Christian values and the church and that kind of thing, and protecting the church from the state in a lot of roles. And then in 2014, a state house seat opened up in Blanchard in North Bossier.
I know. Yep.
So he decided to run, and I was very interested in politics at the time. So I kind of, did some door knocking and stuff. He actually ended up winning without an opponent, which I think we all kind of understand now. No one would have beat him in that race. But that was his first foray, and he was a state rep, never had an election ever. And in 2016, John Fleming decides to run for Senate, and so someone has to fill that congressional seat. Mike runs, kind of no one thought he could win, right? He had a good team around him. I didn't play a big role in that campaign. Again, I wasn't very active at that point, did some volunteering and that kind of thing, but got to see it. And Mike won a campaign that not many people thought he could. And I guess less than 8 years later, he's the Speaker of the House, right? So it's pretty crazy.
Yeah, so I could have sworn he was. That's my fault. But here's a story. I'm in Denver on business, and I'm trying to grow some channel partners for some sales with the cybersecurity company I'm with. And I'm out in Denver, and I'm meeting these MSPs, managed service providers. Right, so you have MSSP, managed security service provider. You have MSPs. MSPs are your IT guys, right? They make sure your printers and you got malware, and they're your IT guys, and you have your cyber guys. So the MSP companies, there are a lot of them, and they're good, and they make decent profit. So I met this lady, and she asked where I was from, her and her husband, and they owned a company together. And I said, well, I'm out of Shreveport or Bossier City. And she goes, I don't remember how the conversation exactly went. And it turns out her brother is Mike Johnson. Really? Yeah. So that was a good contact. That's the type of contacts you want to make on business trips.
That's right.
So of course I milked the Louisiana angle on that one.
Oh yeah.
But she lives in Houston, and of course I haven't talked to them in a long time, but they're good people, man. And so when I was growing up, the congressman of Congressional District 4 was from Vernon Parish, and I forgot his name. He was congressman for 20 years or more.
Yeah, I know who you're talking about.
Anyway, he was from Leesville, Louisiana, and he was my congressman my whole life.
Which is very impressive to those of the folks listening that anyone can get elected to a congressional seat out of, if your seat of power is Leesville Parish. I mean,
there you go.
Or Leesville and out of Vernon Parish. I don't know how many residents are there, but it's not many.
It's not many. You don't all the money. So Louisiana is your archetypical southern state, a deep southern state. So you have old money,
right?
And that old money is concentrated in certain regions, and it hasn't left. So your influence of power is along I-20 and I-10,
right?
But all of your power, all of your family power, your money, your old money, it's always in the southern states. I mean, if a guy enters the race from the south, he's going to win. I mean, that's Senator Kennedy beat the congressman. Dang, man, he took the spot of this gentleman. He ran for he ran for Senate, and then of course he didn't win. Kennedy won.
Judge John Fleming, now state treasurer.
That's him right there. Yes.
John probably could have won that race and I'm giving him free advice at this point, but it's fairly obvious, so it's not that not that intrusive. But if John would have stayed in North Louisiana and won everything, let's just say north of I-10, Alexandria and all that kind of stuff, performed very well there, and then stayed kind of salty in maybe like Lake Charles, he would have been in the runoff and he would have won against a Democrat. But he didn't. He tried to go and be the big guy in Baton Rouge and New Orleans, all that kind of stuff.
And they didn't.
Kennedy was going to sweep that.
They didn't. Yeah.
And Kennedy actually beat John Fleming in places in North Louisiana, and you just can't have that happen.
No.
So, there are ways, but you're right. And people in South Louisiana definitely look down on people from North Louisiana.
Of course they do. It's two different states.
Two different states. It is.
You have your Protestant Baptists.
Yep.
Your typical Southern. People, right?
The northern part, everything north of I-10 is more like is your typical, Bible Belt. There's a church on every street corner, kind of southern town, and then South Louisiana is another world.
It is.
New Orleans, they talk with almost a New York accent. It's so much different.
It is. It's Catholic. It's heavily Catholic. It's Acadiana French, Spanish. You got a whole different mix down there, and they do not consider them. They don't consider us Louisianians, but we don't consider them. So it's a fun dynamics when you get into that. But you're not going to beat them. You're not going to outraise the money down there. You're not going to beat them down there. The population's down there, and it's a hard. There's a reason why the middle between the interstates you don't see any. You don't see any.
And it's funny. I mean, at least 3 of our statewide elected officials are from Lafayette now. So
yeah, well, that's a influential city. It's big and it's economical. It's growing, a lot of power, a lot of tourist money, and it's extremely conservative. So if you run well and you do well there, you're going to get some considerable backing. But we had some politicians, statewide power players, come out of Faraday, Louisiana, which is South Central Cottonport area.
Oh yeah, there's
Avoyles down in that area.
A prominent family has come out of Faraday, Louisiana.
Yes, yeah. Well, we could do a whole podcast on Louisiana politics and culture.
Yeah, Faraday is an interesting town. Obviously, it's where Jerry Lee Lewis is from.
There you go.
Is out of Faraday, and of course his 2 cousins who were prominent, and one of them still kicking to this day. You had Mickey Gilley, the famous country guitarist, was Jerry Lee's probably 2nd cousin, and then his 1st cousin, probably more like a brother, was Reverend Jimmy Swaggart, who is out of Baton Rouge now. So they obviously a very prominent family musical. So out of Faraday, and there's other than Faraday either. So
amazing, man.
Yeah.
I love that. I love that stuff. I could do this all day long. So, you got some inside stuff you want to share?
You want me to talk a little bit about this election down here, kind of how?
Let's without you getting into. I don't want you to get over your skis.
Yeah,
but give us some inside. Give us some inside work here. When did you know you're going to win, or are you take it how you want to? You take us where you want to go.
So we have to separate between, obviously, we have what I'm going to call the primary. It's a jungle primary. Everyone's in it. That was on November 5th, and then the runoff was on December 7th. So we were confident going into the runoff that we'd be in the runoff. I didn't think we'd come in first in the runoff. I thought we'd come in second. And I did not know. See, I had two different opinions. My gut told me that we would be in the runoff against the incumbent. My brain told me, based off looking at numbers and that kind of stuff, that there was such a gap between Ted James and Mayor Broome. My head told me that it would be us and Ted James in a runoff. So I had these conflicting opinions, and I really didn't know. But if someone asked me out of place, I said, it'll be us and Ted James. He'll be first, we'll be second, and that would have been a very tough road for us. But on election night, that wasn't the case, and I was happy to be wrong and happy to see that we were in the runoff against Mayor Broome. We thought that just aligned better for us and our chances. So we had a good feeling going into it, but you just never know. We didn't have good polling. That was consistent.
That's because you didn't use Quantus Insights.
That's right. We didn't use Quantus Insights. So, that changed it. But there were some things we did. We did some really targeted digital stuff. We did a little bit of TV. We didn't have much money. We didn't have much TV money. But we had a candidate, and this is what is very important. I spoke with to the Louisiana Republican women last year in November, and I talked about how we did it in Shreveport, how you could do it in Baton Rouge next year, which is now this year. And the main part of my speech, which you had to have the right candidate. You couldn't take any Joe Blow, average Republican, and go do this. You had to have somebody that was really different, that could break the mold to a certain extent. Did I ever think that would be a football coach? No, I didn't. That never once crossed my mind. But when a football coach got in it, someone called me the day that he qualified, which again was the last day of qualifying. I said, well, this is a kiss of death. I mean, you have the other candidates been campaigning for months. I said, I don't know if he'll have much of a chance. But I heard him speak probably a week after that at a Chamber of Commerce meeting. And he told a story, and the story just pierced into the hearts and souls of everybody, including me. It was a story that this football coach had a player, and he was coaching at an inner city school. And he had a football player who was starting as a 14-year-old as DB for his football team last year. He turned 15 on Christmas Day, and this was a very bright young man. He had a 22 on the ACT at 14, and some people might think, well, that's great. Well, at the school that he's at, the average was a 13.
Yeah.
So, this was a very intelligent young man who was well on his way. On New Year's Day, him and four of his buddies were walking down the street on New Year's Day in the middle of the day, and they were gunned down. The now Mayor President-elect, Sid Edwards, will tell you if it wasn't for, not necessarily that event, but if it wasn't for him being at Weston-Broome, he would have never run for mayor. Weston-Broome was the high school he was at in North Baton Rouge. It's majority African-American. It's in, a bad part of town.
Yeah.
Nothing going on economically. People are still without hope. Jobs are, few and far between. The ones that are there don't pay well. I think the median income in that zip code is $21,000 per household. So I mean, that's the kind of place. And when he told me that story, I saw a man's heart. And I don't do this for the money. I do it for the cause. So I try my best to help candidates I believe in. I'm not going to agree with everything, but if I think it's a good person, that's who I want to get on board with, right? And when he said that, I said, okay, I can ride with this guy. So that's how he got into the race. And then to get back to your question now, I'm rambling.
No, you're not. This is good. I like it.
Going into the December 7th runoff, we thought we were going to win. My projections on coming out of early voting had a conservative estimate about 1,200 vote lead out of early voting in our favor. And of course, on election night, it was maybe 3,500. So I felt pretty good after early voting, but you got to wait and see. Some precincts come in. Anything can happen turnout wise. And so we're waiting to see. And by about 9:30, I called it. And since some people called it, and it was all over by then. So of course, everyone calls it. It was just shocking victory, very unexpected. But I mean, I saw this all. I wasn't the only one. There were some other people on our team too. and we saw this all along. I mean, it was we had a plan in the beginning. You know, campaigns have war rooms. You know, when something goes wrong, you got to get in that war room, got a plan, right? And of course, we got a tax for all these sorts of things and you know, minor stuff. But we never had our war room had cobwebs in it. We didn't need to necessarily use it. So because we had a plan and we stuck to our plan the whole time, but we had a good candidate, and that was the difference. With a good soul and had crossover appeal and, you know, all that kind of stuff.
So I did a little research for this, and I mean, I got some spreadsheets here of the city, but no need to get in all that because we know what it was. I mean, we had 2000 was Republican victory, and after that, it is just Holden.
Yeah, Kip Holden was the
man. He was a juggernaut.
He was a powerhouse.
He destroyed everyone. Yeah, and guys, when I mean destroy people, we're talking.
His second election to mayor, I think he won by more than 70%.
71 to 12.
Yeah, 71. And how many people were made up that 12%? 2 or 3?
Yeah,
there were more than one person that made up that 12%.
Oh yeah, no, you're exactly right.
Yeah,
right.
He was a juggernaut for sure.
And 60 to 2012, 60 to 34. I mean, this guy.
Yeah, and keep in mind that's his third election as mayor. I mean, so you have there's some people who get tired of you, right? And he lost a little bit, but still well into the 60s. I mean, landslides.
Yeah, this guy was something else.
Yeah.
But by doing a little research, I was looking up Sid Edwards, and I saw some of his speeches, and he was talking about, you know, look, as a football coach, man, and you're putting kids out there, and you got to build a team, right?
Yep.
And that's all that stuff, that racial stuff or these differences, that stuff that stops at the sidelines, right? Or stops in the locker room. You don't even have it in the locker room. And he sit down in this. I think he even sit down in one of the seats next to it. And I was like, hey, this guy's all right. That's the colorful stuff that Louisiana people like.
Yeah, he asked in that. I know the speech. He asked for people in the room to raise their hand, Democrat, Republican, whatever. There were maybe 3 Republicans, and me and him were 2 of them. So, you know. That was, but at the end he said, "I need your vote."
Yep.
And we did. I mean, there was no way we were going to be able to win this off, you know, just Republicans or, you know, that. We had to broaden the base, and we had a candidate who actually wanted to broaden the base, and it will lead as the mayor president as a unifier.
Well, you think about how many lives. Assuming he was a football coach for decades.
Yeah, he has the reputation. He's very humble. In fact, he kept coaching, by the way, throughout the campaign.
Of course he did.
He took his team to the quarterfinals for the first time. They've been in the quarterfinals since, I don't know, 30 years maybe. So he's a very good coach. He's won a basketball state championship and a football state championship the same year. I think he's probably the only one to ever do that. He hit 200 wins in this last season. He's known as the coach's coach. All his coach, like Nick Saban, so his coaches, you know, are everywhere now. His former assistants are.
That's everywhere. How it goes.
Yeah, coaching major.
Well, you think about how many lives he's touched and impacted. These guys that they have kids now, whether they're African American or white, or, you know, it's a blue collar town. Louisiana's a blue collar state.
That's right.
And you think about how many lives he's touched and people who probably couldn't wait to vote for the man.
Yeah.
And so I'll tell you, Mason, I was doing a video a couple of weeks ago, and I was doing a live video, and somebody got into my chats and they were asking me about, what do you think about the East Baton Rouge runoff? And I'm like, oh shit. You know, I'm like, I know a young man that's doing that campaign. And I go, man, I don't know. I don't know. I looked a little bit into it when I started meeting with you, but my thought was he was going to lose it by about 2 points.
Yeah.
Honestly, he ended up winning it 54 to 46, guys.
Yeah, we kind of felt going into election day that if it was close, we were going to lose.
Yeah, that's
you know, because that's how we could win it if it was close too, but we just felt if it was close, then it would be she would skate by us by a couple thousand votes.
Yep, that's
you know, but it obviously wasn't close, you know. So.
It was not. So let me tell you guys. So in 2020, Mayor Broome, the incumbent, she won 56 to 43.
Yeah.
Okay. In 2016, it was a little closer, 51 to 48, and that's kind of where I pegged the runoff was going to be at 51-49. In 2024, Sid Edwards flips it 54 to 46. So we went from 56 to 43 to 54 to 46. So this was a huge upset. A 21-point swing in a blue island, and like you said, in a red state, not heavily unionized, but still union, very industry oriented, predominantly African American city. It's got its challenges. It's got some economic challenges. It's got crime challenges. It's got schooling challenges, healthcare challenges, infrastructure challenges. There's a whole nine about that.
Yeah.
It costs a lot of money to operate a city like Baton Rouge, to make it somewhat of a workers, somebody want to move there and bring their kids there and go to school there and get a job there as a chemical engineer or whatever, even a teacher.
And Baton Rouge has seen some outward migration.
Exactly. That's what
and not necessarily Baton Rouge is different. A lot of people moving out of Louisiana, moving to other states, Texas, Tennessee, Florida, that kind of stuff. Baton Rouge is seeing outward migration into the surrounding parishes. So a lot of people move to Livingston. They have a great school system. Ascension Parish, which is just south of East Baton Rouge, has been booming. And they're like, please don't send any more, because their school system, they can only build schools so quickly.
Yep.
Build neighborhoods so quickly.
Yep.
So Baton Rouge has seen outward migration over the past few years. And of course, East Baton Rouge Parish was in the news earlier this year for having America's newest city, a city called St. George.
They broke away, right?
Yeah. Broke away is a relative term. It depends on who they broke away, but really it was an unincorporated part of the parish that incorporated themselves. A lot of people didn't want that, but they did. It was a multi-year legal battle. The voters approved it by, I think, probably 53% of the vote, maybe 54% of the vote in 2019. And it's been caught up in the courts ever since, in the Louisiana Supreme Court. And I guess April of this year said that they were good to go on. So I lied to you. I said there's no 25 elections, but there's some 25 elections in St. George. Their mayor, council, and all that kind of stuff. It's got to get elected this year.
I'm going to stay in your hip pocket for some of that, because I want to be a part of that. I worked on a campaign. This was in Georgia. I lived in Augusta, Georgia, and I helped a man run for county commissioner against a very strong incumbent. Now, he was doing margins like Holden, but not quite like that. But he was doing in the 60s, upper 60s, and that was my first campaign. I actually also worked on a campaign during that same time with a congressman. He was running for governor, and he got a call from the White House, or from the Bush administration, to go ahead and run for a congressional seat, and the state backers backed him as well. And I think he's still a congressman today. He was an interesting guy. I was helping him in Augusta, but the county commissioner, which is a good race to get into for cutting your teeth, right? That type of retail politics, and we lost, but we ended up getting like 44% of the vote, and then the challenger before that was, maybe 32% of the vote. It was bad. It was like 68-32. He got 43% of the vote. And what I got on when I got on board, what I found was kind of like what you're talking about. There was no war room. There was no voter vaults. There was no precinct level. And I'm going to knock on every door. And that's fine to campaign on. I told him that, dude. Keep saying that. Keep saying. I wasn't his campaign manager, but I was his vote guy. I was the guy trying to find him his votes. I said, we're not going to knock on every door.
Yeah.
We're not going to do that. You don't have the money. We don't have the time. We're not going to do that. Grill hot dogs. Do all that stuff. Here's the list of doors you need to knock on. So let me get you in front of the people who are going to vote. And if
I could get those clients in those state rep and state house, state senate races, that are more retail politics like that, to knock the doors, I tell them tonight they'd be more successful than they were, because they just want to go right. They want, why don't I just knock every door?
It's not going to happen, brother.
They're not. So you'll never hit the target. I need you to hit.
You don't have enough time.
Every door on the street.
You don't have enough time. Most of these guys that are running for county commissioner level, they have a job. They have a day job. Right? Yeah. They got kids. They get off work at 5 and they go campaign till 10:30 at night. Yeah. And then they go home and they go back to their day job. And
imagine doing that in a city with 500,000 people.
Exactly. And you can't get
right?
and you can't get fired from your day job because you're not paying attention to your day. There's a fine balance there.
Yeah.
And that's why there's always the advantage for people who have money. They can self-fund their own campaigns and their lawyers or whatever they can do.
Right.
They don't have to show up for work all the time. But anyway, I helped that man, and he was a fun candidate to work with. But we lost, and he had some limitations in some ways. He was good at those cookouts, so I'll give him that. He was good at those cookouts. He wasn't so good at face-to-face and sitting in someone's parlor or foyer or living room. And it was, you learn. I'm not denigrating this guy. I'm just saying, you as a campaign guy, you're learning what looks good, what works, and if you want to do this in the future, you got to make some notes for yourself so you can
because it's
help guide.
It's all about the candidate. It's like
absolutely about the candidate.
In campaign politics, you're like a jockey, right? You could be the best jockey in the world, but if you don't have a good horse, you're not gonna get.
Yeah, if your horse is lame, it ain't gonna work out.
That's right.
Yeah, I loved it, and I always thought about getting back into it. I never knew I was going to get into polling and forecasting, which I'll probably always do to a certain degree. But there's always room, to branch out and to work with campaigns. I think that's what we're going to do as well. We're going to spin up some things and assist in these midterms in one way or the other. We're going to get behind candidates that we want to get behind.
Right.
We run the risk of getting into that partisan label, and we got to be careful with that.
Right.
But I think we did a pretty good job of separating our partisan affiliations with our polling. Yeah. And we're not outwardly partisan, man. We're not. But look, we're humans, human nature. We're going to make a choice just like everybody else, and we're totally entitled and obligated to do that, just like anybody else does. Listen, we had Trump winning one poll, a national popular. It was our last national popular vote poll. Perhaps he could have won the second to the last. And we had Harris winning by 0.6 probably. And then our last national poll was October 27th to the 30th, and we had Trump winning that poll. So, dude, it's not like we had Trump. We were just, creating numbers and having Trump winning all the time. Our first Wisconsin poll, we had Harris winning by a point. So we were, there's more money to make. You have more at stake reputation wise if you put out good data.
Right.
And these people who are making these,
especially in your guys' blind, if you're putting out good data in the last 2 weeks, there's a lot of pollsters who go into the field, in September, and they don't show up in late October because they don't want to get rated on those polls. And that's
exactly right. So, that's exactly right. I wanted to. We pumped out three Rust Belt states. Our Rust Belt state error rate, when you combine all three Rust Belt, Wisconsin, Pennsylvania, and Michigan, was 0.6. That was our combined error rate. That's
impressive.
That's machine level.
Unheard of, actually.
That's machine level precision. And then our
if you took the results, if you took the results and just made a poll after to try to get the bet, you wouldn't even make it that close.
Probably not.
Put more error in. Yeah.
Probably not. We nailed. And what was helping us is we were nailing one of the top lines. That's what helped us. So we had Trump at 50.3 in Pennsylvania. He finished at 50.3. We had Harris finishing at 48.9 in Wisconsin. She finished at 48.8. So we were just nailing these top margins, and that helped us. So, yeah, man, we're looking forward to spin this up. And we want to, it's good to have you on here because I want that elite human capital. I want to be friends and connected to these guys that are going to be in this for a while. Election Twitter is loaded with talent. Yeah. And now they may have anime emojis. Yeah. You may not actually know who they are, but man, there is so much.
Yeah,
talent.
I mean, Rich Barris and those guys are, they did good job this year.
Oh yeah, Rich is
a lot of talent out there, a lot of talent. And then there's a lot of not talent too. That you see. I think it's kind of funny, on at 2:50 a.m. Technically on election night. So
all right.
December the 8th at 2:50, I tweeted out something I'm loving because I was scrolling through Twitter late now, trying to go to bed, scrolling through Twitter and all these people talking. I'm national, talking about this election that we just won. And then I started seeing kind of the local people, okay? And they're all, and they're all in full confidence at 2:50 in the morning explaining how this happened. And so, but the funny thing was, these same people were the people who told me the day of the election, y'all lose by 10 points. You have a chance, all this kind of stuff. So I just tweeted out, I said, I'm having a great time scrolling through Twitter, looking at everyone's explanation as to how Sid Edwards won this mayor's race. The only thing is the people who are explaining it are the same people who spend all their time telling you that he can never win. So
that's how it goes, bro.
Blah, 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 blah. Let's talk more action.
That's how it goes.
I
always tell people, I owned a boxing gym here in Lufkin for about 3 years, and I closed it this year. I just time wise, I couldn't do it. My son got a little older. He's still in it a little bit. I sent him to another gym, and I had a bunch of fighters, and I used to compete, and I loved it, and I coached. And you're always going to get those guys that. And I would say, look, man, until you can demonstrate your idea of perfection, shut up. You're always going to get those guys on the sideline, kind of, throwing sour grapes at you. It is what it is. But you got to get in there, man. It's the man in the arena. It's Teddy Roosevelt. I have that speech in my pub in my backyard on my wall, and I've had it for years. I got other stuff like that, and it's really the man in the arena. It's the guy who is in there doing it, and if he fails, he'll learn from it. That's the thing about failure. It's the most misunderstood word in the English language. Failure is the it's just totally misunderstood. There is no failure. Failure is when you quit. That's failure. Done. I tapped out. Okay, now you can go and sit in your room and sulk if that's what you want to do. But failure is, as long as you're learning from it, it's not failure, man. You're actually gathering intelligence and getting stronger. It looks like you're vulnerable, but you're not. You've learned a lot. As long as you keep that mindset, that you can move forward in anything. So
some of the best candidates I've ever had were candidates who lost the election before this one.
What's that?
Some of the best candidates I've ever had were candidates who ran in a previous election and lost.
Oh yeah, man. There's a lot of stories like that. Bill Clinton. Yeah, he ran for governor, won, and then got booted out, and then learned from it, and then went back and won. And I don't know how many. They do 2-year terms as a governor in Arkansas. So
crazy.
And he won 10 in a row. So and then look what that guy came from Arkansas, which I'm jealous. I really want a Louisiana presidential candidate. Yeah,
it's crazy when you look at some of the talent we've had in
Bobby Jindal, for example, or some other guys.
Bobby Jindal was great, but look at for instance, former Governor Edwin Edwards. You talk about a political powerhouse in the modern era. There is no one that's strong. If you'll let me, I'll kind of tell your listeners.
I want to hear, because you're right. They're guys. They don't create politicians like him in other states. He can only survive and thrive in a state like Louisiana. Edwin Edwards has got an amazing story. Jail time, comes out. It just anyway.
So I'll run through it a little bit. So Edwin is he runs for Congress in the early or late 60s. He was maybe ran for city council person, and he was from North Louisiana, actually, from some small northern town in North Louisiana. I can't remember quite where it is. Probably near Vernon Parish, but it's not Vernon Parish. And then so he runs. He runs for Congress. He gets elected to Congress. A few years later, he decides to run for governor in 1972 or 71, I think. He wins the governorship in 71. He rewrites the state's constitution in 72, which is still the constitution we have today. It's very convoluted, but he wrote it. He changed the way elections happen because he had to run in a tough Democratic primary. Louisiana was one of the bluest states in America back then. He had to run a tough Democratic primary, and after that, he had to face an unscathed Republican challenger. He thought that was unfair. So what did Edwin do? He just rewrote the rules and said, we're not going to do that anymore. So everyone will run together in a jungle primary. So he has all of this money because he changed the way that oil was taxed, and he's controlling everything. I mean, everything. He redid all the roads, all the bridges, all the schools. So he's doing great. There's so much money. Well, part of this new constitution was you could not serve for more than 2 terms consecutively. So he goes home. back, but he's still controlling everything. He's still controlling the state. And actually, after him was he's known as the father of the Republican Party in Louisiana. Through the jungle primary, Republicans were able to gain control. It was never the party primary system that was going to allow Republicans to breach in, but it was the jungle primary. So he sits at home, and Dave Train's the first Republican governor since Reconstruction. And Dave only lasts one term before Governor Edwards comes back for a third term. The third term was much more difficult. At that time, the oil market had tanked. It hurt Dave Train's why he wasn't reelected. They said, we want to go back to Governor Edwards when times were good, right? Well, that didn't quite happen. Times weren't all that good, and money was tough. And so he just never really was able to get onto it. There were always allegations of corruption, always allegations of corruption. And by the end of his third term, he's ready to run for a fourth term, and he makes the runoff, but barely, with a guy named Buddy Roemer.
Buddy Roemer, man. That was in the late 80s.
At the time, in the late 80s. At the time was a Democrat. It's by 89. At the time was a Democrat. Later changed the Reform Party. But he gets elected as a Democrat because Edwin decides he never wants to lose a race. So before the runoff, he drops out and he lets Governor Roemer basically take over at that point. Although he never really stopped running the state, and Governor Roemer would tell you that. So Governor Roemer is, again, governor for 4 years, but is very unpopular.
Yep.
He's done a lot of things to try to fix the state's budget, but he's faced a lot of opposition, and he fails to make a runoff. But Edwin wants to make a return to politics and wants to run for governor. He's super corrupt. He was charged and acquitted with corruption in his third term as governor, and racketeering and all that kind of stuff. In fact, he's very famous for a lot of quotes, and one of his quotes going into the courthouse as governor, and they say, "Governor Edwards, have you done anything wrong?" And he says, "Why, yes, but not in connection with this investigation."
Yes.
And walks into the courthouse. So that was who we were dealing with, someone everyone knew was corrupt. So who is the most corrupt person in the state that's thought about as other people and not liked by a vast majority of the people? How is that person going to be able to get that fourth term in a state like Louisiana in 1993? Well, he convinced none other than David Duke himself, former Grand Wizard of the KKK, to run for governor. Sad day in Louisiana that happened. A funny story about that in a second. Actually, I'll do it now before I forget. I was at a Turning Point USA conference in June where we were doing a lot of election stuff, and there was a protest outside, and it was led by none other than Nick Fuentes, who is he's a young guy, but he's not a Republican or anything like that. He's really like a neo-Nazi who hates Trump and all that kind of stuff. And who do I see out there? None other than David Duke. And I couldn't believe it, that he, in the flesh, was just there. I had a lot of balls to be out there, to be honest with you. But anyway, so David Duke makes the runoff with Governor Edwards. And the tagline of that campaign was "Vote for the crook, it's important."
Vote for the crook, it's important. I knew you were going to go there.
In the famous debate, Edwin always won debates. Great orator. And he said, David Duke talked about having the change of heart and God and all this stuff. And Governor Edwards, very confident, looked over and looked in the camera and said, it gave this whole spiel, but basically it was, if he has suddenly had this realization, he needs to go and do work in the community. He's given us 45 years or however he was of hate and hurt. He needs to give us 45 years of healing and hope before he can come and run for governor. Just like that, Edwin Edwards served another 4 years and a final fourth term. Of course, they were scared that he'd come back again. He decided not to run for governor for a fifth term. So the feds indicted him, and he was convicted for racketeering, something he never really admitted to, but everyone knew he did. And he served 10 or 11 years in a federal penitentiary, and that's where he met his fourth wife, I think, fourth or fifth wife, Trina. She was writing him letters, and she was 35, and he was 70.
He's in his late 60s, 65 probably.
And they got married, and after he got out of jail, they had a kid. very famously had a kid. They had a reality show for a year. So that was Edwin Edwards. And one last time to prove to everybody that he was still a powerhouse. He couldn't run for governor anymore. Although he probably could have won the governor's race in 2015, actually, if he would have ran. But he couldn't run. In 2014, he runs for Congress in the most Republican district in Louisiana, and he pulled almost 40% of the vote. That was how powerful. And his reputation was still bad. And the years after, a guy named Leo Honeycutt wrote a book about him, completely changed his reputation. If he'd have ran for office after that book was written, he would have won.
Yeah, he was just those colorful characters, man. He was from actually a Voles parish.
A Voles parish.
Yeah, which is south central, south of Marksville, it's in Marksville. Yeah, Cottonport, all that area.
But he never had a Cajun accent.
That's the thing. It's not. They pronounce like dollar, like a U.S. dollar, like dollar, U.S. dollar, wada. It's a mix of veal plat talk flat. It's not French Acadia, but it's a blend of it. And then you have your Southern blend. They had their own unique accent. They even say Cottonport. It's just a weird way. It's not weird. It's just their accent. You go down to Marksville, the casinos, you play poker, or wherever you're hanging out. Well, you'll hear these different accents. You'll know, and it's literally a fine line. You can literally be outside of Rapides Parish and just drive south, go to a restaurant. Nothing's changed. You go a little further into Marksville, perhaps a little further down there, accents change. It's literally a line. It's very interesting. And then he had all these things, these quotes. He was a very colorful character. He was.
Oh man, the night before the election with David Duke, he very famously said, "The only way I can lose this election is I'm found in bed with a dead girl or a live boy."
Yeah, it's exactly. I was going to take it. He had so much stuff, man.
Again, in the debate with David Duke, this line I can't remember. This just came to me. He was asked if there was any, he had anything in common with David Duke, and of course he had a quote. He said, "Yes, sir. I have one thing in common. We're both wizards under the sheets." So,
Oh, that's him. So you talk about somebody who embodied the Huey P. Long. Huey P. Long had a brother.
Russell.
Russell
was actually Huey's son, or maybe his nephew.
His brother was a governor.
Earl Long was the governor.
Yeah.
Very, very colorful.
Yeah, so you have these personalities in Louisiana. They almost become like dictators.
Earl Long was put in a mental institution while he was governor.
Yeah.
Then realized that he could actually fire the state doctor, which he did, and appointed a lackey to
got him out.
And he went out and did a press conference and basically said, "I'm the only one here that can prove I'm not crazy," because he had the doctor's note. So
so these type of personalities we're talking about, rewriting the Constitution. That stuff is Huey P. And it's something about United States or Louisiana governors. On paper, they don't have as much power as any other. No. They're kind of a medium strength executive office, but it's the power.
But in practice, it's probably the most powerful governorship.
It is, and they'll rewrite constitutions. Owning like Huey P. Long. Honestly, you couldn't be a school bus driver, and this is overstating anything. You couldn't be a school bus driver or a school board member without having some lineage or some approval by Huey P. Long. Maybe not him personally, but his power sales, right? You had to be a Huey P. Long guy to get state job.
One story that definitely exemplary about Huey is this kind of really shows the kind of power that he had and the kind of person that he was. He was very famous in saying that the governor's mansion was way too nice for his predecessors, but it was not nice, not anywhere near nice enough for him. So he went and asked the state legislature for money for a new governor's mansion. They told him no. So what does he do? He calls up the state penitentiary and has a crew sit down. And by lunch that afternoon, by lunchtime the next day, the governor's mansion was gone. And so the state legislature had to get a new governor's mansion built, designed by Huey Long, and it is a miniature White House. He said, "I want to know the light switches are when I move in." And really, if he wasn't assassinated, he would have made a hell of a run against FDR in 36.
He absolutely would. He absolutely would have. And there was a lot of stories as to we'd not go to that. That's for another talk. But yeah, there was a lot of things. Huey P. was to the left. So there's always been a populist strain in Louisiana. Economically, Louisianans I mean, there's been Republican influence over the years, but Louisianians have been left of center when it comes to economics. We don't mean socialists, but we mean tax dollars actually going back to the citizens, right, or to the residents of Louisiana. And it's always been a poor state. The Great Depression. You'll see some generations, and I knew a few of them in my hometown. Their sons were named Huey, and there was Huey P. Long was something else. But you just have a strong Democratic presence, and there is nothing unordinary at all for your local state elections in Louisiana.
Hold on, you want to meet Sid Edwards?
Yeah, I'd love to meet Sid Edwards.
This is Jason. He's a pollster.
What's happening, Jason?
Tell him to get down. So Mr. Edwards, pleasure to meet you. Congratulations.
Just coach. Coach is good.
Coach
Edwards. Don't want me to be a coach no more. I'm not mayor until January. What?
January
27th?
No, second.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Amazing, man. I watched a lot of your videos, and me and Mason talked about you in the past, and that's what we're talking about now. Congratulations.
Thank you.
That was a huge swing. We talked about 21 points. You did a great job, man. We were following you over here. I was telling him I'm originally from Louisiana, not your neck of the woods. I'm a little further north, but you did a great job, man. Congratulations. Hard-earned victory.
Thank you, man. Guys like Mason and the team, absolutely amazing, and it was God-led, man. So we're excited to get started.
Well, good for you, Coach. Good for you. We look forward to seeing a little more of you. Hopefully, maybe you got another trick in your bag 4 years from now. We'll see what you got going on.
Hey, we're going to give it a run.
Yes,
good
sir.
Thank you, man. Appreciate you.
Pleasure's mine, sir. Take care of yourself.
Right. Yes, sir.
All right. That was awesome. That was a surprise. This is going good. This is going really good. But we were talking about there's nothing out of the ordinary for first of all, your power centers and parish politics in Louisiana is your district attorneys and your sheriffs. That's your vote getters. You don't get elected in parish politics without having the backing of your district attorney.
Right.
But there's nothing unordinary about those guys being Democrats. They be registered Democrats, run as a Democrat, but when it comes time to vote at the federal level, they're all Republicans. It's a very strange state. It's a very strange state. That Democrat strange runs deep. Well, Mason, look, man, I'm going to turn it over to you. We've been going at it. This has been great. I want to do it again. I want to get you back on. I definitely want to get you back on 2025 rolls around because we got some things on the cooker, and I know you do too. I want to stay connected with you for the midterms.
Let's do it.
Hey, do you know the governor of Louisiana by chance? Are you connected with him in any way?
I am. I was at his office today.
So I have okay, good. I indirectly know the chief of staff. And
Kyle Ruckert.
Yeah.
In his office today.
Yeah. So my little brother knows him. My little brother's a football coach in Avoyelles Parish. I think he's going to move to another school. But in any case, so do you know Chris Tyler from Alexandria? He ran for state representative years ago. He owns a staffing agency there in Alexandria.
I don't know if I do.
Yeah, no problem. We probably shouldn't be name dropping anyway. But anyway, I want to reach out to the chief of staff and talk about some things here we got lined up. But let's stay in touch. Especially as the midterms roll around, this thing starts taking shape. Look, the first 100 days of Trump's term is going to be breakneck speed. And look, this thing he's got a lot of political capital. This isn't like 2016 at all. There's going to be some things he's capable of doing now. He's not going to have landmines set in front of him. There's no Russian hoax. The Speaker of the House isn't against him as soon as he walks through the door. So we'll see what he has in store and what he can and can't get away with. And we'll know that by the midterms. If he does what he's supposed to do and the people are behind it, the midterms is going to be interesting. However, if he suffers from the curse of first-year midterm elections, then, history will do what it does. And, we'll see how this goes. But
we'll see. It's
going to be a sprint. The Trump administration is going to burn up all of that capital, hoping they deliver on the things that they're supposed to deliver on, and they'll get a boost in the midterms.
That's right.
If not, either way, we got work cut out for us as this rolls around. So I'm going to turn this over to you, Mason. Tell everybody how to find you. Your
they
website.
Can find me on Twitter at Mason.
We got you on the ticker right here.
BATTS LA. I guess on X. The website is mrbpoliticalconsulting.com. They can message me there. So that's probably Twitter, and the website's probably the best place. If you want the best response, message me on Twitter or X, and I'll do my best to get back to you. A little bit underwater right now, as you can imagine. So,
Yep.
But yeah, thanks for having me on, Jason. And
last question: are you going to be a part of Mayor Edwards' administration? Or are you going to go back and do your thing?
We're weighing that option. If he asked me, that would be hard to turn down. But I in the digital age, you can kind of do it all now, right? So
you absolutely can.
So I'll still be whatever happens, I'll be, this is very passionate. So whatever happens, I'll still be involved.
Well, good. Mason, you reach out to me anytime. I'll be in contact with you. If I can help you in any way, let's plan to talk about that, and let's see if we can't make some changes together.
Let's do it. Thanks, Jason.
You bet, my man. Thank you. All right, guys. Mason, we'll talk to you, bud.
All right. Thank you.
Goodbye. All right. That was Mason. That was Mason Batts out of Louisiana. Hey, that's a dynamic young man. He's done some things that he's in his early 20s. He's already had a couple of successful campaigns under his belt. He just pulled off a major upset in South Louisiana or Baton Rouge, which you saw Mayor-elect Sid Edwards, former high school football coach and basketball coach. So we really appreciate that, him coming on. Look him up, look his website up. Any respective or prospective candidates that's looking to run in Louisiana, you might want to hit him up because he seems to be knowing what he's doing. He's had some really good success. And as always, we appreciate our guests. Guys, we're going to wrap this up. I hope you enjoyed it. And also, please like and subscribe to the channel. We're going to bring more of this kind of content together. We're bouncing around between different subjects, but it's always good to have this inside knowledge and get these guys that's actually been a part of the battle and understand what's going on out there. Until next time, we'll talk to you soon. Bye.